Let's go through the 5 that we recommend you thinking about now. Number 1, whether property that is brought into the marriage will remain the property of the person who brought it in, or will that property become marital property? Now, this is important for you to consider in the context of, let's use the example of a house. Let's say you own a house prior to getting married. Once you get married, you and your soon-to-be spouse will move into this house. What happens to that house, that property, if you are to sell it and then buy a new marital house with it? Should all of that money from your separate property become marital once you buy a new property with it? These are the kind of things you need to think about. This feeds into question number 2, whether property that is acquired during the marriage will be considered joint marital property or will be considered property of one of the parties. Again, this really depends on how it was purchased. If you're purchasing this property with your separate money, will it be yours separately? Or just because you're purchasing it during the marriage, does it automatically become marital? Will you have a sunset clause? Many couples consider adding a sunset clause into their prenuptial agreement because it allows their prenup to expire at a certain date when they feel the prenup just won't matter anymore. This may be 25 years of marriage, 15 years of marriage. It's completely up to you. And HelloPrenup lets you choose which anniversary you want your prenup to expire on. Number 4, this is a big one. Spousal support. You need to decide whether or not you and your future spouse will be subject to spousal support in your state, which is often governed by state guidelines, or whether you and your future spouse will waive your rights to spousal support in the future in the event of a divorce. You need to discuss whether there will be a requirement in your prenuptial agreement that you each retain life insurance policies during the marriage. HelloPrenup gives you an option to include this clause in your prenup. One last thing to think about, a prenuptial agreement becomes effective upon marriage. After your wedding, and depending on the state you're in, the agreement can usually only be amended or revoked by a written agreement in the same formality as the prenuptial agreement and signed by both parties. Again, this does differ state to state, but generally speaking, this is how it works. Thanks for watching and happy negotiating.